If you've ever felt stuck between comfort and possibility, this conversation is for you.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion, my words got power, my thoughts have action, motivation, stay gracious, that's greatness, be audacious, motivation, be audacious, innovation, be audacious, inspiration, be bold, motivation, be audacious.
I did this for 10 years, would go into surgery, worked with heart surgeons, was getting paid in the US over $200,000 a year. It was not hard. I was working 30 hours a week, and it became the golden handcuffs where friends are like, why would you ever leave this? And I didn't want to be, this is the thing that kind of got me into action, oddly, was I didn't want to be 70, 80 years old and say, I wish I would have tried, right? I wish I would have tried and just really put myself out there and see if I had what it took to become an entrepreneur. Right? They looked at my business, they looked at the income coming in, and they're like, well, you should pretty much leave your job as soon as possible. And if it doesn't work out, you could always go back to medical sales. And I was like, I could always go back to it. So it reframed it for me. So a lot of times in our mind, we have this thing like, if it works, I'm a success. If it doesn't work, I'm a failure. But I think there's just this reframing of anything that fails. It's just information. It doesn't mean you're a failure.
Because at some point, we all hit that moment where we ask ourselves, do I stay where it's safe, or do I take the risk and find out what I'm actually capable of? This podcast is all about helping you unlock your inner greatness and live your best audacious life. Today's guest is Bronson Hill. He's an investor, entrepreneur, and author of Fire Yourself, who walked away from a high-paying career to build a life centered around freedom, purpose, and passive income. And I'll be honest with you, while we were talking, I kept thinking about how many people are sitting in something that looks good on paper, but doesn't feel good in their spirit. And the tension that comes with knowing there's more for you, but not knowing if you should go or not. This one will make you think, because it certainly had me thinking. Here's my conversation with Bronson. Enjoy. Hey, Bronson, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you for taking the time to be here.
Oddly excited to be here, man. I love talking about audacious living, and I know you're the guy to talk to about that. So let's do it.
Yeah, no, listen, I've firmly entrenched myself in that space, and I'm here and we're here. So thank you for being a part of it. It really is, a labor of love. I mean, encouraging individuals to be audacious. First of all, I love the word. I mean, I can't say it without smiling. That's one of those words that make you smile, right? Audacious. You feel good when you say it. But it really does. It has a way of just bringing the best out of people. And the thing that I love about the most, it exists in every single one of us. And so what we spend a lot of time here doing is encouraging people how to tap into that, right? And reminding people that exists, because it does. Every single, you think of, your journey, as a baby, you learn how to walk. Well, that's pretty audacious. And you know what happened? You probably fell down when you were in a walk, but you got back up anyways. That's audacious. That's audacity we're talking about, right? And so, it's just nurturing what already exists naturally inside of us, to be bold, to take risks, to exhibit courage, to take chances. That's what life is. And so, that's what we're all about here. You yourself have your own journey. You play a lot in the financial space, and you encourage individuals to search for that financial freedom, if you will. And that involves some risk taking and taking some chances as well. And so, I know you also get it. So maybe as a starting point, Bronson, I can get you to introduce yourself to our audience, talk about the work that you do, and what's got you to the point that you're at now.
Yeah, so I love it. I love the image behind you. It says the bold framework of how do you live a bold life. So I guess the best part to start is I was a medical device sales rep. I did this for 10 years. Would go into surgery, worked with heart surgeons, was getting paid in the US over $200,000 a year. It was not hard. I was working 30 hours a week, and it became the golden handcuffs where friends are like, why would you ever leave this thing? But I kept wanting to create something for myself. And I didn't want to be, this is the thing that kind of got me into action, oddly, was I didn't want to be 70, 80 years old and say, I wish I would have tried, right? I wish I would have tried and just really put myself out there and see if I had what it took to become an entrepreneur, to actually do this on my own. So I had been doing some real estate deals of different types, some single family, some multifamily, had raised some money, started, there's some stories of how I got started in that, started raising money for some projects. And then I basically started raising a lot of money. There was really some encounters that I made with different people and started raising tens of millions of dollars for different projects. and there was a process to get there. But really, what we do now, I left my corporate job about 4 years ago, which was amazing, and haven't had regrets. I do miss the steady income, which is nice, but I'm able to travel. I traveled 6 times internationally last year, including the base camp of Everest, Portugal, India,
Nice.
different places. And so I'm able to create these things with for myself, my daughter, able to write a book, do some things that have been really awesome. And so I think for me, the biggest thing is just really, continuing to put myself in the arena and continue to learn and grow. And a lot of times there's a path when you get to be kind of 30s, 40s or older. You kind of know how to do it. Usually have a skill, a trade, a career, or something, and you kind of know what the regular thing is. But I find the growth zone it's where you feel a little bit uncomfortable, or maybe a lot uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and you get in the arena, and you're like, I'm in the game now. I'm not in the cheap seats throwing comments and what. I'm actually in the arena doing the work, and so that's been a lot of fun. So we help people through different investments to create passive income or reduce tax liability and create cash flow. So my book, How You Fire Yourself, which is right here, became an Amazon #1 bestseller in real estate investing. And so it's just how you replace your working income with passive income in 3 years or less. So that's really what we do.
I love it, and I always love when people tell their stories and they tell it so nonchalantly, right? And like here, you walked away from a stable income to try something that you've never done before, and you say it so casually and so matter of factly. That's a big freaking deal, Bronson. It really truly is, and so I want to acknowledge that because stability is important to us. It's our livelihood. For some people, they've worked to get to a certain place and they worked hard to get there, and so to suddenly say, okay, let me try something else is a big deal. So I'm sort of curious where the audacity came from to make that kind of a leap.
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to, for me, I think in a lot of jobs and my sales jobs particularly, after doing it for 10 years, I kind of knew the role. Like I knew, hey, I could go get the sale. I could go, I could meet the people and kind of figure out a way to do it. Within 6 to 12 months, you kind of know the players. And it's not that it's easy. It's just that it was less like intellectually challenging. I kind of knew
Yep.
what I needed to do. And now it's like, I guess what really, created the courage is just, again, I didn't want to I felt like there was a part that felt a little bit inauthentic to me because
Hmm.
I knew what it took to get the sale. I knew what it took to, win people over. And so I did that. I said, okay, I'm going to basically become this person. And in the process of doing that, you kind of lose a little bit of your soul, where it's not like, and it sounds really awful, but you're just not living from the most genuine place. And of course, there's not a place to like, I'm going to be fully authentic all the time. I'm going to share all my opinions with everybody everywhere. But it's great now because I feel like I can bring my faith into what I do. I can bring, things that I'm passionate about, things that I get excited about. And so but I think that, for a lot of us, we will reach a point in our life where we're like, it's time for a switch. It's time to do something that requires courage that I could fail at. And really what it took for me,
Hmm.
one of the things it took for me, Audley, was I was in a room full of entrepreneurs, and I'd paid to be a part of this group. And I thank God I did, because all of my family and friends were like, why would you leave your great job? Don't do it. Don't do it. But this entrepreneur group, they looked at my business, they looked at the income coming in, and they're like, well, like you should pretty much leave your job as soon as possible. And if it doesn't work out, you could always go back to medical sales. And I was like, I could always go back to it. So it like reframed it for me. So a lot of times in our
Yep.
mind, we have this thing like, if it works, I'm a success. If it doesn't work, I'm a failure. But like, I think there's just this reframing of anything that fails. It's just
Yes.
information. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It just
Yes.
means you tried, like Edison with the light bulb. I didn't, fail 3,000 times on creating electricity. I discovered successfully 3,000 ways that it doesn't work.
It's
Right. So
work.
you have to reframe. You've got to continually reframe.
Well, and I love that because it's so true. And if you so think about here for a second, Bronson. So you try something. So first and foremost, let's give ourselves some grace and accept the fact that if we're trying something for the first time, brand new, we've never done it before, chances are we're going to suck at it. Like if we can
Yeah.
accept that as a starting point, right? We not to say that success is unattainable when you try something the first time, because it is for a smaller select few, if you will. But by and large, I think if we can accept that we're trying something the first time, we're going to miss things, we're not going to understand it, we're going to bugger it up, or all these things potentially can happen to us. I think when we give ourselves that as a starting point, that grace, we can accept whatever comes after that. And so what comes after that? Let's look at this. Either we succeed or we don't. But to your point, if we don't succeed, we now know 3,000 ways of how not to do it. And we've equipped ourselves for the 300th, 3,000th, and first attempt of possibly getting what we're after. What's wrong with that?
Yeah. There's nothing wrong, and that's why I think we're afraid to fail. And this is the difference between the entrepreneur mindset and the employee mindset. As an employee, and a lot of us, maybe a lot of listeners are employees, or they're working for someone else, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's again, if you make too many mistakes as an employee, what happens? You get fired, right? But as an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to make a lot of mistakes.
That's
And
right.
so I'll try all kinds of different things. I'll try this. Well, I have the same goal, but I'll try route A, that didn't work. B didn't work. C didn't work. But D, that was okay. Let's try. And then it was E, that one worked. So then I'll double down on that. But it's just, and then that works for all. And then that changes. Then I got to try something else. So it's just continually being willing to reinvent yourself. But what it does is it allows you to stay available to opportunities as they come. So a new business I'm actually starting a new business. So I've started multiple businesses, but I live in Pasadena, California, which is right near where the fires were in Altadena, where over 15,000 homes burned. And so in the
Hmm.
area where I live, there's about 6,000 single family homes that burned down. And so we've created a business called Altamod Homes that basically is a dealer for modular homes to go rebuild in these areas. You can do it
Okay.
for about half the price of building a stick build or less, and you can do it way faster. They build these homes in the high desert in a factory in 7 days. They put them in pieces on trucks, and they go and deliver them, install them in one day. And these are like 2 or 3 thousand square foot houses that are nice custom homes. So it's like there's just opportunity that comes up if you're just open to be willing to try new things. And I think for a lot
Mm.
of us, we get intellectually kind of just comfortable, and we're not willing to put ourselves out there. But that's where all the growth happens.
Totally is. The yeah, it's just the idea of just going into space and trying. Like I just love the word why not, like that phrase why
Yeah,
not, and giving a shot, because I mean it opens up the possibilities. Why not? Like, what if you tried this and you were successful? We
yeah,
you hear so much, oh, I'm gonna fail, I'm not okay. What if you were successful?
yeah,
Imagine approaching problems like that all the time, or challenges like that, how different life
totally.
would be, right? Like it's
Hundred
incredible.
percent. Well, and it's like what's possible. What can you create? And so there's some personal development courses and things I've done, and it's just the idea is like we have the ability to create new possibilities
Yes.
just simply through our mind and through and even from our faith. I mean, there's some scriptures I follow. It's like God can do exceedingly more than all I can ever think or even imagine, right? So it's like I can think and imagine a lot, but a lot of times I don't spend enough time in that space. And Napoleon Hill, who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich, we're not related, even though they're the same last name. It'd be amazing if we were. But he said, spend 30 minutes a day thinking about the person that you intend to become. And so and that's a lot of time, especially in 20, but this was written like 80 years ago. And so I actually am writing a second book called Rich Brain, which is how the wealthy change their brain to change their bank account. Because I've had now over 3,000 individual one-on-one calls with high net worth investors.
Yeah.
And I've realized there's certain mindsets that really allow people to create more wealth. And there's ones that actually they actually create people that cause resistance to it. And we self-sabotage. We walk
Mm.
into things, we feel self-defeated. And it's obvious what's going to happen because of our self-talk, because of our
Yep.
procrastination, because of some of these things. So if we can get that right and we can become this person that is a more powerful, a more wealthy, a more giving, a more generous, a more present person, we can live out of that even today, which is amazing.
Tell me how was the plan to always go in the financial space? Did you see yourself there, like, or this kind of a happy accident?
Yeah, definitely a happy accident. I was a youth pastor when I first started out of high school, out of college. Did that for 4 or 5 years. Lived overseas, doing some international work in Africa, and then I got into medical sales. That was kind of a whole story from that. And then from there, I mean, it's funny. Every single step I've kind of gone. Everybody say, "Oh, it's so different than what you're doing before." But like, I draw from all those things now, right? The medical
Yes.
sales, I have a lot of sales experience. When I was a pastor, it was like, well, we have a lot of life conversations. To be honest, we've had deals, Audley, that have been absolute home runs. We've had deals that have gone okay, and we have had deals that we've just had total train wrecks. Like they just have not gone well at all.
Right.
And so when you have a call with somebody, you're like, "Hey, this deal didn't go well, or we've lost money, or whatever." It's a hard conversation, but it enters in that space where again things are real, and there's hopefully learning that happens from all of it. So I think. I think for me, one thing I just continue to do is to say, well, what's next? What's the opportunity? What's the growth? And I think for all of us, life isn't happening, as Tony Robbins would say, it's not happening to us, it's happening for us. And so it's not about achieving the big goals, it's the person that we become by having big goals and
Yeah.
moving toward them. We actually become a different person. I can tell you're a personal growth guy and you're doing all this stuff as well, which is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I do. I think it's so important, and the lessons that Again, I've just learned it in my own life, and so I think you're absolutely correct. You talked about losing money. Apparently, you lost $70,000 in one day. I would blow people's minds, no question. But I'm sure you learned a lot from that, and from a risk and resilience standpoint. Talk about that experience.
Yeah, so that's the story for my book. Yeah, I basically, when my net worth was about $200,000, I lost $70,000 in one day in an options trading strategy. So if anybody's ever traded options, you can make a lot of money. I actually had made $20,000 over the previous 4 or 5 months, and then in one day I lost $70,000. So it was a net loss of 50K over that whole strategy, and it was a hard day, definitely. But I learned, I'm not a good options trader, and I should do other things. So
Okay.
sometimes, just learning. I know people have lost millions of dollars, and you have to learn. There's lessons that life gives us, and people love talking about the wins, but we don't talk about the losses or the challenges as much. But that's where the learning happens. So I think that people that are great, there's very few people I know that are really good at trading options. I don't know if you know much
Hmm.
about options, but there's some strategies that are basic strategies called covered calls, where you own the stock and you sell it. If it goes up, you get a little bit of bonus as you sell it. So there's some strategies people do like that. But other than that, I think, if you're an engineer, maybe, but there's very few people that can effectively, especially with options, because if for investing, you've got to actually be right twice, right? With a stock, you have to be right on the direction, right? If it's
Gotcha.
going up or it's going down. Options,
Yep.
you got to be right on two things. You got to be right on the direction and the timing. So if you're wrong on
Mm.
either of those with options, you lose money. So I learned that about options.
Okay. All right. All right. I would think that, and even as you're talking about that, I would think that this space in real estate and private equity, how it can be daunting or intimidating for people, and I think a big part of why people don't take that risk, or they're afraid to, is confidence. Right? They don't have the confidence,
Yeah.
and some instances the knowledge. How do you overcome that for people to kind of be better about this space that they're entering into?
Yeah, well, I think there's this saying. A lot of people think that you have to have it right the first time. You've got to be great coming out of the gate. Everything's got to be perfect. And I think that investing can be really intimidating. And people, that's why a lot of people have, at least in the U.S., they have an investment advisor. I imagine in Canada as well.
Hmm.
And there's Warren Buffett, who's one of our generation's greatest investors. He would say most people, buying index funds is great because you just kind of track the market at a low cost, and it's really great. It's a very simple way to invest. It's a lot of people do that, but I think a lot of people, when they get to investing, they feel like, well, I just don't know. I know I should be doing real estate. Usually, most people know somebody that has become very wealthy by investing in real estate or doing something else or having a business. And so we all feel kind of like we should, especially if you have some resources. You're kind of like, man, I know I should be taking this money. And, as Warren Buffett says, that you should use this, to make money while you sleep. And so how do you do that? Well, what's that process? So I think that, it can be a little intimidating, but I think it's just to learn, just to go to, local meetups, depending in
Hmm.
most, large or mid-sized cities in the US or Canada have places where you can go and just meet other people that are doing it. And just by having conversations, there's a term we use in the US called real estate syndication, which you guys call, private equity real estate. And so it's just like, when I first heard that word syndication, I was like, what does that even mean? It sounds like a crime syndication or TV syndication. Like, what is that? So then it was weird at first, but then when I started listening to it and hearing more, I was like, oh, this is just how we structure and we pool investments together. And people can really be passive, because one of the problems we talk about in my book is that some people start and they buy a rental house, and then they have two and they've got five, and they realize they bought themselves another job. And so the goal is to grow wealth without taking up more of your time. And it's
Right.
possible. It's just those are deals that are more passive.
Right, right. And I think when you talk about that timepiece, people think that's just the way it has to be. I just got to do this because that's how the hustle mentality. It's got to be, it's got to be, it's got to be. And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, it can be, but that's not the only way to be successful. Right. So,
Yeah,
and it's
exactly. Yeah,
breaking that
and
down.
then there's the hustle. Like a lot of people that are doctors or make a lot of money hourly. It's like, well, how do you dial back from that? Like, what's your plan to make more money, or what are you going to do when you stop working? Well, I'm going to work more. I'm going to like do stocks, or but like, how do you actually get income? What actually puts money in your pocket each
That's
month?
right.
And so that's the whole. It is a skill set. It's like a muscle. Like if you had
Yeah.
a really
And,
good
and
workout,
doctors
and
don't have
like
pensions either, right? Doctors don't have pensions.
yeah, exactly. Well, it depends, depends on which doctor, where there some do, but yeah, so yeah, actually that's true. In the US, they don't have pensions. They may have 401ks and other things like retirement plans, but they don't necessarily pay out income here.
Yeah.
But it's a skill. It's a skill to learn, how do I invest in something? How do I vet a team or vet in my book we talk a lot about that. What's the process of the questions you ask, and how do you know if they're a good person? How do you know about their
Right.
experience, and how can you invest with somebody you've never met? Like, how is that even? And now I've raised over $50 million, almost all from people I've never met. Most of them I've never met in person. And so at least when they first invested. So it's just, it's a process we go through to learn and grow and scale and all that. So.
Mm-mm. Freedom, adventure, and impact are sort of pillars. I guess you sort of build, life around, if you will. And I guess I'm curious, sort of what does that look like for you personally?
Yeah, I love to travel. I talked about that. I'm a fitness guy. I love to, be in great shape. My daughter's almost 13, so taking her on trips. We went to Alaska this summer. We went to Seattle, did a camping trip in the Olympic National Park there, which is amazing. And so, I think just having time and space. They say too, it's interesting. When I had a job, I had a job. It was much more, here's my job description. But now it's like I don't. I have a lot of. I need to spend a lot of time thinking, and I have, a few employees. I got a couple overseas employees, and I have to be clear. So I get away every quarter for a couple days, and I'll just reflect on, am I getting the results out of my life that I want? A lot of people
Right.
don't spend enough time like saying, I'm doing this, and am I getting what I want? And so I'll go away to the mountains, and I'll just go and, bring a whiteboard or just journal and bring a guitar and just try to, and most of the good ideas that I have, and I think most people have, even statistically, they don't happen while you're sitting at your desk, right? They'll happen when you're in the shower, when you're on a trip, when you're outside, you're hiking,
Yeah.
you're doing stuff. So the idea of like, it requires a lot of creativity to continue to think up new ideas and have ideas, and not, most ideas are not good, but there will be an idea. It's like, man, I've made off of one idea, I've made millions of dollars, or I've made a lot of money off of different ideas. And so I think that stuff is super powerful.
Okay. Let's talk about not necessarily failures, but mistakes. And I'm curious to see if there are there sort of common mistakes that you maybe see new investors make that they kind of repeat themselves, and if what that is, and what kind of advice would you give them to sort of maybe avoid it?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a couple of big ones. The primary one I would see is analysis paralysis. A lot of people will be like, "Oh yeah, I should do
Mm,
that," and they just never do anything. And so it can be intimidating. You see deals, and you're like, I don't," they'll just never pull the trigger on anything. So I think you have to kind of free yourself up that, you're never going to do it perfectly. Some deals don't go as well as, others. Some will, you'll learn regardless. And so you have to look at it like education. I mean, I've made a lot of money, I've lost money, and I've learned a lot more on the money I've lost than the money I've gained. And so I think it's just realizing that's all part of the process. So I think people get stuck there. The second one is the other side of that, is that some people will just take a bunch of action and maybe invest too quickly, or not really do a little work. And it's good, I
mhm,
think, just to kind of take a steady thing where you're maybe investing in a deal, maybe a couple deals this year, a couple deals next year, just kind of ease into it a bit, because people will get really excited about, oh, I need to do this. And it's great. But, people will have varying degrees of net worth. If somebody's high net worth, meaning they're worth over $2 million or more, maybe, $50,000 is a lot of money, but it's also like, well, it's not like if their net worth was $100,000, right? It's not half of their net worth. It's actually a small comparison amount. And so if you
mhm.
can find things you can do where it's not a huge amount of what you have, but you can put it in, you can learn, you can ask questions, all those things, it can be pretty valuable.
I would imagine that curiosity is kind of a important thing to have, sort of in this sort of ever changing world of trying to build wealth, and so in this financial, because in this world where there's always something changing, always something coming to play, that it's important to have that element of curiosity to make to. I was gonna say stay ahead, but even just keep up. What does I mean? How has curiosity helped you?
I think curiosity is one of the biggest things I admire in people, that, especially that are older. A lot of people I know I know a guy that's 86 years old, is worth at least $500 million. And he's one of the most curious guys I've ever met. Like, he's just so curious about everything. And I think the alternative to that is somebody gets, kind of angry at the world and bitter. And usually kind of people go one or the other when they get older. But I think when it comes to investing, it's almost like you're playing baseball and you're at bat, and you can just watch every pitch go by, and you don't have to swing until you find your pitch. There's no
Yeah.
strikeout, there's no walk. You just kind of stay there. And so it's really great. And so it allows you to learn. And what I've realized is there's a great time to invest in apartment buildings, and there's a great time to invest in oil and gas, and there's a great time to invest in precious metals, or invest in all kinds of different things. But it changes at different times. And so at one time it may be great for one thing, one time it may be great for another thing. But you have a lot of choice, and there's no specific way. Like you and I, we might have totally different things we invest in, and we can both be wildly successful. And
Yep.
so that's what's amazing about it, is we can collaborate. There's no one right answer. It's kind of like there's opportunity everywhere, and there's risk all over. But if we can just continue to learn, it's going to help us to minimize risk just by what we know, and it's going to help us to collaborate. And then, that's why we actually have a mastermind group. It's a paid group. People come and join for live events, and we just share deals. We share what's working, what's not working, and we do some virtual stuff. And it's just, I find that for most people that are wealthy, they don't have people that they can talk to about money, and
Mm.
except for people that are like in the financial industry, and those people are not they're biased, right? Myself included. We have deals that we do. I want everybody to do my deals, but let's say you're a passive investor, you have a high net worth. If you find another passive investor, they don't have a dog in the fight. They're just trying to share information. They'd say, I'd work with these guys all day long. These guys over here, don't work with them for these reasons. And it's you share those notes. So I think having that network is really how you grow your net worth.
Mm. Are there sort of common things or themes that the wealthy do? I mean, you said you talked earlier about being exposed to a bunch of rich people, and
Yeah.
is there something that you saw within that's common that sort of maybe explains why they're at where they're at?
Yeah. So one thing that really shocked me oddly is that, basically wealthy people, most people think, at least in our culture, they think that you're either born with money or you're not. This is kind of the mainstream narrative and media is that you have the trust fund people, then you got everybody else and whatever. But the facts are actually very different. Fidelity Investments, the large investment group in 2019, they did a study and they found that 86% of millionaires in the US were self-made. So that means only almost about 9 out of 10 were they figured out a way to become wealthy, and that should be very encouraging to those of us that didn't grow up in a trust fund, right? That we actually can do things to learn and change, and so these are learnable, teachable things. And I think that there are specific habits and things that people do, but the biggest one really is starting with that mindset of how do I actually position myself in a way that I have that growth mindset, that I'm not I'm not walking into things self-sabotaging, or I'm saying, and this has actually happened to me before, where I'll like have a deal that's much larger than what we've ever done, and I'll pass on it. And then I came back and I was like, no, this actually is the right kind of deal. This would about 4 or 5x our business if I just simply did this. And so, there's times we can actually kind of come back to that. So a lot of it is mindset. A lot of it is just being willing to learn and being willing to be around people.
Right.
There's this thing that rubs off when you're around other people, especially people that are wealthier than you. You're going to just, even from their afterthoughts, you're going to learn a lot just by being around them.
And I think the thing that we oftentimes forget at the end of the day, wealthy people are still people.
Yeah.
They've still got things that motivate them, that get them excited, their own fears, their own whatever. Like they're still people. They just manage to do things differently to get them to a status level, right? And that's the difference. And so,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's basically it, is that people, there's really no difference. I mean, if you think of yourself, let's say whoever's listening, and you just 10x your net worth,
yep.
but it's still you. But how are you different? It's basically a collection of experience and time, and different, taking different actions, right? And so if you think of it in that way, it's like, oh, I just need to learn what things I need to do and how I need to change my mindset and how I need to kind of be thinking that I am that person. It's kind of creating your future self now, as Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who wrote some of these books about 10x is easier than 2x. How do I create this 10x person now? And then basically I start living out of that, and you just start making different choices because you
Mm,
realize you're actually becoming that person.
got you. Got you. Bronson, tell me how was being an author part of the plan too when you wrote Fire Yourself, or how'd that develop?
Yeah, fire yourself. I've always wanted to write a book or write books, and it just, I think a lot of things happen kind of by accident, and just realizing I had all these conversations, and I realized there really wasn't a good book out there that I saw that was like, hey, if I'm someone who wants to get into real estate, I should be doing this passively. What do you refer people to, right? I mean, there's the Great Rich Dad Poor Dad is a good book, just kind of learning generally about investing. But when it comes to like, how do I evaluate these alternatives, right? Most people are doing stocks and other traditional things, but that's a lot of them just because Wall Street or these big firms have taught us that this is what we should be doing. And I think there's some misalignment of interest there as well. So I think, yeah, it kind of came just over time through trying different things and feeling like, hey, I really want to help educate people. And so now I'll have calls with people, and they've read my book, and oh, I loved it. And I've read it a second or third time, and so that's always
Mhm.
encouraging. But it's opened up a lot of doors for me. It's been really fun to open up a lot of doors to be able to help more people.
Got you, got you. If I were to ask you what does living an audacious life mean, what would you say? What's that mean to you?
I was just looking at your LinkedIn here, man. It showed you have like 30 different experiences here that you've done with all kinds of volunteer, all these different things. That's pretty audacious, man. I love all the things you've created
Thank
in
you,
your life. But I think that, you're a great example of this, oddly, of just
thank you.
finding things that you value and you believe in, and going for them, right? And a lot of times these are things sometimes that are aspirational that don't exist now. And this is, the world is created by people who are audacious enough to believe that it can be different than it is. And so you make a stand for these. I'm going to stand for this cause, for this purpose, for this impact. And it can be, it's funny. I was a youth pastor, so I was helping people getting close to their connection with God and finding purpose and all that. It was a
Yep.
really critical time for me when I was in high school. And now I feel like I do a similar thing. People are like, well, what's all this wealth stuff? You're doing this wealth. But I think, for me, the biggest thing is when you have wealth, you're able to really go after your purpose. Most people, at least in the US, are about 70% are not engaged at work. I imagine it's probably similar in Canada where it's like they're doing a job because they have to, not because they want to. And so if you just
Yep.
ask people, what is your dream? Well, if you had enough money coming in, it may actually give people the opportunity, actually, hey, I'm really going to go after this now. And I think that's the most precious thing that we have is actually that calling or that purpose or that dream that we have in our heart.
Yeah. And a lot of people are absent while they're present, right? Like they're there but not there. They're their head somewhere else. And
100%.
yeah, no, I hear loud and clear. And I think for me, I think one thing that um, I've always believed in is just trying stuff like this, what I like doing. And so I'm on one hand, I'm a basketball commissioner, and then all of a sudden I'm a podcaster, and then I'm over here doing an expert in change management work. And so it's a wide cross section of stuff. And each time it's been like, okay, let's give it a shot and see. And some of those things I created, and some of them I caught, right? Like some were taught, some were caught, right? And some of these things just came my way. I'm like, hey, and I jumped on it, and I think that's sort of been the key. And what happens is, and you mentioned earlier, expression I use oftentimes, a collection of experiences, and I think that life absolutely is a collection of experiences. And what happens is, we live our life forward, right? And we're making those decisions. It's an art, right? But then when you stop and look back at all the choices and decisions that you made, you recognize it's a science. So I had to go here, to go here, to go here, to go here, to get to here. And it makes sense. And that's where all the dots connect. And so, but again, it's being open in that moment. Like I will tell you, I remember when I received this call and I was asked to take on this role of commissioner. I said, no, I've never done it before. I'm not going to try it. Right.
Right.
And then I hung up the phone going, huh? Like, why wouldn't I? And so that's really kind of what I try to promote, and I think it's so important. And I'm definitely hearing that in your story too.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we really don't know what we're capable of, and that's where it's amazing how is that developed in someone, right? Where they and they're able to do bigger and better and more amazing things. Is a lot of times it comes from small wins, right? It comes from a small win. Somebody has a win and something. Oh, I did that. It's great. And when you go back, and this is what I try to do with my daughter, and I think kids, it's great, right? Getting them to be successful in sports or in some other thing that they can. Like my daughter's been playing 5 seasons of soccer now. She's played spring and fall, and
Yep.
she just had her first goal a few weeks ago. And I was there to watch from the side as she put a move on somebody when it kicked it, and made it, and then the next week she had another goal. And again, so 5 seasons she's gone, and and
Yep.
then back to back because I think she realized like, oh, I can score goals. I'm somebody who I can actually score a goal. And that's a small thing, but it builds on it. It becomes, oh, it's not impossible. But then when you do that repeatedly, you're like, oh, I've never started my own business before, but I've been successful in this job. I've been successful in this other
Right.
volunteer thing I did, whatever. And so it leads to being, okay, well, let's try it, whatever. And then you go on to bigger and better and more amazing things. And then it's like, then you realize nothing is impossible. And then when you see people like, whoever your hero is, doing impossible things. And I think of people, there's Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, obviously these guys have their own, things that they're doing. I don't always agree with, but you see they're like literally going to Mars and doing all these crazy things. You're like, well, it's not impossible because they just simply kept creating this new, bigger person in front of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Congratulations to your daughter, buddy. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's been
Thanks, man.
excited to watch that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Um, Ross, I'd love to know if you could, go back and give yourself, your younger self, some financial advice, what would it be?
I would say just start learning about investing and would be one. I'd say another one is, let's say I was 18 and I wasn't working. I enjoyed what I did as a youth pastor, but if I wasn't doing stuff in the ministry, go to somebody you admire and just start learning from them. Just offer to work for free. Go be an intern. Go just try to like add value. And a lot of times, again, there's a lot of people that say I want to be mentored or I want to
Hmm.
grow whatever. And I think that's a good thing. A lot of people do want to mentor, but I think a better thing is, and this just works well in life. If you go to someone and say, I find that, someone who's successful, more successful than you, and you say, how can I help you in this specific area? Or I see in your business, I've seen what you're doing. Can I help you with this specific thing that you're working on? And a lot of times, like, it'll be surprising because a lot of times people they're thinking about this stuff all the time, right? These are successful people. Most people are coming to them asking for something, and when
Yeah.
you say, "Hey, how can I help?" and don't just say, "How can I help?" please, because it's like I don't know, how can you help me? Like, I get the question sometimes, like, how can I help? It's like, well, I don't know. But if they're like, "Hey, I was thinking you do this in your business, and I have this skill set. I'm just wondering, can I help in this specific area?"
That's
And
right.
that one conversation to me led to, like, I mean, it was like that one conversation led to me, going from raising $100,000 for one deal to basically raising $15 million with someone else.
Beautiful.
And just
Beautiful.
like, it was like a rocket fuel. So I think that is just a dynamite approach, especially if you're in the room with amazing people. It can open a lot of doors for you for sure.
And what I like about that approach, I'm going to add a little piece to that, if you don't mind, is when you go to someone, and not just you're just asking for your help, it's like, this is who I am. Here's what I can bring you, kind of a thing. Because what you've
Yeah.
now done is you save them from trying to have to figure out how they can make you, like, and look, people. I'm sure people want to help. If they have the time, they help everyone they possibly could. But I think you do a lot when you say, look, this is who I am. This is what I bring to the table. Here's what I see I can fit into you, as opposed to making them do the work to figure out how they can fit you into their system. Right. And so
Yeah.
that's one small piece I'd add to that.
Yeah. 100%. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Want to have some fun here? Let's do a rapid fire questions. How do you think about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do it.
First, huh?
Yeah. I love it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So first thing that comes to mind. Okay. Real estate or stocks?
Real estate all day. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think, lots of reasons. Yeah.
Risk taker or strategist?
Oh, one or the other. I mean, why not both? Can I say
Okay.
both?
Okay. Okay. Outside of your own, one book every aspiring investor should read.
I like the book. I think everybody should read this book. It's called Never Split the Difference. It's written
Okay.
by Chris Voss. It's
Yep.
a
The
former FBI
negotiator.
hostage negotiator, and
Yeah.
it's just an incredible book on negotiation and just how do you deal with other people to get what you create a win-win.
The best investment you ever made.
Best investment I ever made. I think it's probably investing in my daughter, just spending time with her. I think that's the best one.
A misconception people have about money.
A risk conception, you said?
A misconception
A
people have about
misconception.
money.
It takes money to make money, or that
Okay.
it takes your money. It can be other people's money. It can be borrowing from banks. It can be all kinds of things.
Favorite quote or mantra you live by?
Um, let's see. This is one I love. I've shared some previously, but this one is: you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I love that one.
Is Yeah, no, I like that. That's a good. Actually, it's a good one. What's one money rule that you've completely broken?
Muddy rule that I've completely broken. I don't know. Do I break my rules? I'm sure I have. I mean, now it's don't invest in options. So obviously I did that before, and that was not good.
All right, last one here. We dedicate this one to the podcast. Finish this sentence. Audacity means what?
Audacity means going for your dream and taking risks to do whatever it takes to get there.
Love it. Love it. Works for me. No
Yeah,
arguments here. I'll take that.
love it. Yeah,
Listen,
yeah, I love it. Man,
Bronson,
audacious.
for those that wanted to connect with you, learn more about you, or get a copy of your book, where can we send them?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate you having me on. I've got a guide I wrote. I don't know how inflation is in Canada and the US. It's pretty strong. Everything costs about 50 to 100% more than it did 5 years ago during COVID. And so I've got a guide that's called How to Use Inflation to Your Advantage. And so it's, ideas using real estate, other people's money, precious metals, some creative strategies people haven't heard. So I'm really excited about it. If people text the word inflation to the number 33777. So you just text the word inflation to 33777. It will ask for your name, your email, and it will share that with you. And you hear about future stuff we're doing.
Very, very cool. And we'll make sure we'll get the show notes, and I guess the book's on Amazon. Fire Yourself. It's on
Books
Amazon.
on Amazon and where you buy your books. Yeah, so you can get it fire yourself, and hopefully listeners will be able to fire themselves.
I love the concept. That's for sure. The idea is be your own boss and fire yourself. It was great. Roz, this has been awesome, man. I really appreciate the time. Congratulations on the work. And again, going back to the very first point we talked about, making that first step and and leaving comfort for the unknown. It's not an easy thing for a lot of people, and you should be commended on that because it is a big, big deal. And so, congratulations on that, and thanks again for being a guest on the Audacious Living Podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Audley. This has been a lot of fun.
Cool. All right, welcome back, man. There's a lot to unpack in that one, and I've got to go back to that moment where Bronson talked about not wanting to wait till he's 78 years old, saying, I wish I would have tried. That right there, that for me was where the conversation got live. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about money. It's about alignment. It's about making decisions that actually reflect who you are and who you're becoming. And what stood out to me was how comfortable he's with trying, failing, adjusting, and continuing forward anyway. Losing $70,000 in a single day? Man, most people would shut it down after that. But for Bronson, it became information. It became part of the process. And I think that's the shift we all need to make. Not what if I fail, but what am I going to learn when I try? And that brings us to today's Audacious Insight. It's time for the Audacious Insight, where we take a quick look at something happening in the real world that reflects the power of bold thinking and intentional action. Now, when Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, was selling fax machines door to door, she had no background in fashion or business. But instead of waiting until she felt ready, she invested her entire $5,000 savings to develop a product she believed in. She faced rejection after rejection before finally getting her product into Neiman Marcus, where it became a massive success and eventually turned her into the world's youngest self-made female billionaire. Her story is a reminder that readiness is often overrated and action is what creates momentum. Audacity isn't about having guarantees. It's about trusting yourself enough to try. Hey, if you want to connect with Bronson directly, check out his book, Fire Yourself, or grab his free guide on using inflation to your advantage. We'll have those links in the show notes below. And if this episode gave you something to think about, share with someone who needs that push right now. Follow the show, leave a review, and keep this conversation going. Because sometimes the life you're meant to live is sitting right on the other side of a decision you've been avoiding. You don't have to have all the answers. You just need the courage to start. Until next time, keep living life audaciously.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion. My words got power, my thoughts have action. Motivation, stay gracious. That's greatness. Be audacious.